An issue that comes up all the time in these debates, if we can even call them that, or arguments, and it's been given a tremendous amount of power by the huckster William Lane Craig. It's effectively the Kalam cosmological argument. But the way that argument, rather than being in syllogistic form in a formal debate, gets partitioned down to just normal, regular, everyday life for your average Christian, it becomes the question, how can something come from nothing? And you get the Dennis Prager, Bill O'Reilly, moronic point of view that I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because that would require me to believe that something can come from nothing. Complete nonsense. But I think until you really look into it, you don't quite understand why exactly it's complete nonsense. So I wanted to hit this from a very layman's point of view to hopefully make better sense of it. So there are three big problems with this question foundationally, and we don't need a technical understanding of physics and what's going on at the particle level. You really only need to understand it at a conceptual level. That's all you really need. The first problem that I won't really address here, it's just more a claim that we can make that is obviously self-evidently true. When you get to the discarding the William Lane Craig version of the argument, when you get to the so something had to create the universe, then that doesn't get you anywhere near a God or a Christian God. It doesn't bring God into existence. It doesn't make it sufficiently or necessarily the case that a God exists. Now you're just left with, okay, if I accept your line of reasoning, something caused the beginning of the universe. And then you get the William Lane Craigs of the world who will take that and run with it and just make a whole bunch of assertions, claim on top of claim on top of unproven claim to make it fit into his worldview. That's not even something you have to take seriously because it's pure casuistry from top to bottom. The two real big problems that are important to recognize here, and again, you don't need a real technical understanding of physics. You shouldn't be scared away by this type of language because of the technical jargon and the seemingly necessary understanding of physics on a technical level. This type of line of reasoning seems to bring about. It's not the case. Just a conceptual understanding of things will do just fine. So the question, how can something come from nothing, carries with it implicitly that at one point there existed a nothing and then something came to be. So in the believer's point of view, you're claiming that at some point there was nothing and then something came about. How can that happen? But for a God. Okay, the first problem is if nothing existed, your God didn't exist either. Nothing is by definition an absence of experience, of existence. So claiming that nothing existed and then claiming that God brought it into existence are two contradictory claims. Either nothing existed or nothing but your God existed. And that parsing of the language is never made apparent. At base, and I'm sure you've heard this, I have too, and this seems to be the scary part, at the Big Bang, the laws of physics break down. And the thing that people have a real hard time with when trying to conceptualize what that means, they tend to hang on to a few things from here and sort of try to map them onto what's there. So the number one question, of course, that you'll get if you say that is, well, what was before the Big Bang? So in my view, the best way I've come up with to explain this is in the form of analogy, which seems to be the thing that I tend to do to make sense of things. If we think about the game of chess, right? So in the game of chess, you have your rooks, you have your bishops, you have your pawns. Your queen can go anywhere on the board. It can't move like a knight, but it can move anywhere on the board. In any given turn, rooks can only move vertically and horizontally. Can't move diagonally. Those rules exist for the pieces within the context of the game of chess, right? And that is analogous to the laws of our universe as we observe them. So that applies to gravity, that applies to time, that potentially applies to the causal role that events play, so cause and effect. At bottom, we don't know that any of these laws, universal rules, descriptive rules, not prescriptive rules, carry over into quote unquote before the Big Bang. So the problem with this is our existence is temporal. So we are not outside of time. We exist within time. Time dictates some components of our existence. We can't just decide, well, I don't want to die, so I'll just leave time behind. That's not the way it works. We are constrained within the rules that govern the universe we observe. Just like a knight can't just get up and decide to play checkers. That's not the way it works. A knight only conceptually exists within the game of chess. And within the game of chess, it has to play by certain rules. So what religious people tend to do with the what happened before the Big Bang question is directly analogous to the knight all of a sudden comes alive, right? It's conscious, but it only exists within the game of chess. So it's not aware of anything outside the game of chess. What the knight then is doing is seeing the things around the chessboard and trying to say, well, how is it possible for that door to close when doors can only go in an L pattern? What the knight is doing is taking the rules that govern its own behavior and applying it to something that necessarily does not play by those rules, or may not, I should say. So the question, what happened before the Big Bang, that before component is a big problem because the universe that we observe is temporal. So we have cause and effect. Things proceed on a timeline, and we use time as the descriptor for that. And of course, it's not that time is a physical reality and seconds are observable in nature. That's just the description that we put on the way things progress in order to keep things organized. But before the Big Bang very well may not make any sense at all if the temporal laws that govern the way that our universe behaves, that we observe, do not apply at the point of the Big Bang. There is no reason that we have to say before the Big Bang is necessitated. There's no reason, and we have no cause to do that. It also seems to be something wonky going on with gravity. I'm not going to pretend to explain it, but every observable law of our observable universe that we see and then we map onto descriptions, we can't get outside of those. So it's very, very difficult, just like it would be for the bishop on the chessboard, to conceptualize how things work outside of the game of chess if all it knew was the game of chess and it was constrained to the chessboard and couldn't operate anywhere else. All it can observe is the rules of chess. It's the same thing for us. We can't truly fully understand and conceptualize what things would look like if they didn't play by the rules that we have to play by. But the problem is, at the point of the Big Bang, those laws seem to break down. And I would recommend listening to Lawrence Krauss or Sean Carroll explain that in more detail. I would probably be doing you a disservice by trying to explain it in any more detail than that. But the main takeaway is the laws that govern our universe are not necessarily, and may in fact not at all be related to a before the Big Bang, or what happened before this universe. If the temporal nature of reality breaks down and is non-existent in preceding events, there are in fact no preceding events. There is no time, so there can be no way for there to be cause and effect on a timeline before the Big Bang. It just doesn't work. It's the analogy is what's north of the North Pole. That's it. There's nothing north of the North Pole. That's just the end of north. And we can understand that because that's a two-dimensional measurement. But when you're talking about concepts that exist outside of the physical world that we observe, it's just incredibly difficult for us to conceptualize that. And in that case, the answer is we don't know. We don't know if there even was a before the Big Bang. If there was, we don't know what was before the Big Bang. So it is objectively irrational for you to claim, you don't know, therefore my God is responsible. It's objectively irrational. It's complete nonsense. You don't have to take that seriously. The thing that I say all the time when talking to my wife about whatever, I don't say it to my wife, but when talking to her about different arguments, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that I'm wrong. That should be obvious to everyone, but people have a really hard time detaching from that notion. The second major problem with this whole what was there before the universe or what was before the Big Bang is that I'm trying to think of a good way to frame this. The question goes back to how can something come from nothing, right? So the issue is, what is nothing? Now, obviously, that's a contradiction in terms because by describing it and giving it attributes, you've defined something into existence. If it exists, then it's not nothing. And they seem to think that this is a point scored on their side of the argument. It really isn't. What you're claiming is you have an argument in the form of a question, and one of the premises of this argument is something that cannot be. That is a problem for you, not me. And there's a few episodes of the Atheist Experience where Tracy Harris goes into the nothing problem with some people, and I'll if I can remember, I'll link them in the description here. But so what is nothing? Well, in this case, they always say we're not talking about Lawrence Krauss, and we're talking about a state of really low level energy. No, we're talking about absolutely nothing. Again, without even really needing to mention it, if your God existed before that, there wasn't nothing, right? So it's a completely nonsensical idea. But nothing means no things. No thing in existence. No thing to experience things. No things to experience time. That is a huge problem because if there is no thing in existence, there is no time because there's no energy, no laws of nature. You're talking about a flat nothing. There can be no temporal component to that. It's not like there's nothing and it's been there for 10,000 years. If there's nothing, that temporal component goes out the window also, because by definition, there wouldn't be any laws governing or even describing what's going on there. There would just be nothing. There would be no things in existence. There wouldn't be any rocks to experience this nothing. It would be a lack of everything. And if that's the case, nothing could have ever come from nothing. I agree with that. So that when someone says something can't come from nothing, I'm fine with that. We can't say that definitively, but it makes sense to me. Again, I'm using the physical laws that describe the way our universe works, so it may end up being a nonsensical statement anyway, prior to the Big Bang, if there is such a thing. But let's say I agree with you that something can't come from nothing. Well, the problem is you're now making the implicit claim that there was a point in time, if that even makes sense, that there was nothing. Okay, so there was nothing there. There was no experience to be had. By definition, there were no physical laws to govern whatever was happening because nothing was happening. If that's the case, then there was no time in this state of nothing. It would be an infinite state of nothing because there has never been and will never be a thing to come into existence because there's no temporal component. And this is, seems to confuse lots of people, and it's totally understandable. I'm confused myself with it sometimes. But let's say, God from nothing brought everything into existence. Okay, by definition, your God exists then. So that's not nothing. Let's say we take a non-theistic approach to the problem and say, well, the energy that was present had some type of reaction and caused everything to come into existence. By definition, there was no energy to interact with anything. There was no energy, there was no matter, there was no nothing. That's your implicit claim, is that at once there was a point where that was the state of reality. It just cannot be then that from that something was generated, because at base the problem is there is nothing to do the generating. By definition, in a state of nothingness, you can't say, well then this caused things to come into existence. If the thing that caused things to come into existence was there to do the causing, there wasn't nothing. A total lack of existence necessitates that there is no driving machine to make things happen, to bring things into existence. So it's all really conceptual, and it just sounds like, philosophical sophistry. But that is a real problem. Even if we're just talking philosophically and linguistically, if the claim that you're making is at one point there was nothing around, there would be nothing to cause anything to happen. And that's at base where the argument fails. So just to go through them again briefly, the three major problems with the I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because you have to believe something can come from nothing. Okay, even if I accept every claim you make about the universe needing a cause, we haven't gotten one step closer to the Christian God being the cause. B, you're a pawn on the chessboard, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the laws that you have to obey as a piece on a chessboard and apply them to things external to the chessboard. We have no reason to believe that things outside the chessboard have to obey the same laws you do. And that's where we're at with the whole Big Bang thing. Before the Big Bang may not make any sense. And then the third component is something can come from nothing. Okay, what you need to do is you need to explain nothing. You need to explain what nothing is, and you need to provide evidence that there ever was a state of nothing, which you simply can't do. It's logically contradictory for the reasons I explained. So hopefully this makes a little more sense of this argument, because I think I heard this a million times up to a point where I just couldn't stand not understanding why that question makes no sense outside of just the seemings going on in my mind as a non-believer. So hopefully that clears something up for somebody out there. I'm not sure if this was just the ramblings of a madman or if it actually makes sense, but just wanted to address that one problem. It's been frustrating me recently. So remember, I'll put the links to those clips where Tracy is talking about the nothingness issue, and if what I said just sounded like garbled nonsense, maybe her explanation will make better sense of it. She's obviously a far better orator than I. So thanks very much.